Thank you for having me today. We're going to dig into the impact of community. I'm going to start off by semi-uncomfortably talking about myself and my journey. Then we will hear some common themes gophers feel about their community. Take a look at what 2018 is going to be and beyond, while we speculate about our future and assess the impact we can have as individuals. And lastly, we're going to give some thanks. I will admit it's hard to talk about myself, but I've been told that in the context of community, anecdotes can work best, and there's no story I know better than my own. First, I want to make it really clear that I grew up in a loving household. My family is the core of who I am, and it is filled with wonderful people. That's me and my mom, and that's me and my little brother, and there's like, 8 or 9 more siblings on top of that. I lose track of them because there's so many. Despite all of that, times were very hard. There were divorces and homelessness, fighting, anger, and loneliness. I was a black child in a white household, and I always felt different. I spoke too well for black students, I was too black for white students, and I looked Latina, which confused everyone. I was bullied, teased, and ridiculed for just being myself, and I always felt out of place. I spent most of my childhood feeling alone, and though I used coping skills to get through it, often the smile on my face was only skin deep. As I grew older, I longed for inclusion. I searched for belonging, I searched for meaning, and I searched for happiness. After high school, I left home and began my journey. People told me that I needed to go to college, so I tried. And after 2 failed attempts at different schools, I realized it wasn't for me. I had worked since I was 12, and I thought maybe I would find my place and meaning at work. I had a job as a retail manager, but things were not going well. I was financially unstable, I lacked security, and I felt completely stuck. When a family friend walked through the door of the store I was managing and asked, "Why are you still here?" I was speechless and frankly very embarrassed. I wasn't sure how to respond. I felt like I was going nowhere and failing to meet everyone's expectations of me. And even worse, I was failing to live up to the expectations for myself. This man, Vivek, offered me the chance at my very first tech job. My response was a resounding yes, and I joined my first startup. The responsibility at my next few jobs varied. I dabbled in business development, content marketing, branding, and community building. But it was clear to me that something was missing. The skills I developed at my first few startups led me to a position at Iron.io. I enjoyed being face-to-face with developers, coordinating educational content, and throwing fun events. And although I had a good time, I still didn't feel like I belonged. I had too many experiences many underrepresented people in tech are familiar with. I was inappropriately grabbed at a conference. I was told by men if they could speak to my male coworker who really knows what he's talking about. I was a woman, I was of color, I was different, and I felt out of place. As part of my work at Iron.io, I took over GoSF, the Go meetup in San Francisco. I enjoyed this meetup immensely. It was overall friendly, and everyone clearly had passion, but the demographic was fairly homogenous, and no one looked like me. My involvement with GoSF and Iron.io gave me the opportunity to attend my very first Go conference. It was here at GothamGo. This is a picture of that. In 2015, so just a few years ago. It was there everything changed for me. People were kind, genuine, and excited, and there was more than just one other woman in the crowd. I had never experienced this before. The feeling of community was infectious, and I wanted to be a part of it. For the first time in tech, I felt truly inspired. Encouraged by this, I went to GopherCon the following summer. That is where I fell in love with the Go community. The conference was amazing, the people were down to earth, and everyone wanted to share knowledge. On Community Day, when I stood up in front of everyone and asked, "What are we doing about diversity?" the responses and concerns were truly heartfelt. This community cared about each other. After a few follow-up conversations around diversity, I was invited to join GoBridge, and this deepened the need in me to contribute in any positive way that I could. As I worked toward diversity efforts, I started to ask questions about community health overall, and spoke at my first Go conference here at GothamGo in 2016, where I provided some solutions that the community could take home with them. Speaker picture from 2016, I believe. This led me to being asked to join the community working group, and I was ecstatic. I felt that this is where I could really make change and impact things. But it was not quite enough. There was so much to be done that balancing the CWG with a full-time position at Netlify, another startup, meant that I wasn't able to dedicate enough time to the community that I loved. Plans weren't being followed through on because of a lack of time, and this made me deeply sad. The Go team saw the need to prioritize community growth, health, and sustainability, so I joined Google. There's a lot of work to be done, and this is just the start. As I said, I've always been a searcher. I've been searching for my people for a long time. The support I've received in the Go community through a divorce, dealing with PTSD, anxiety, depression, over the last few years surpasses any expectation I would have had for a technical community. And it makes it so much more than that. It makes it feel like a family. I have found my tribe, and it is full of gophers. My personal experience is unique, but I've heard so many common themes from others, and I'd like to share a few of those with you now. On Twitter, I asked that people share how the Go community has inspired them, and there was some really great responses, so here are just a few. Prepare to get inspired, and yes, this is not the only Go pun in this talk. So Brian says, I have been involved in the open source prior to joining the Go community, but never to the extent I am now. The energy of this community is infectious and motivating. I now run a meetup, I'm speaking at conferences, and I have new mentors because of Go and its community. And I think Brian touches on a theme that a lot of people share, which is energy, leadership, and the ability to become a leader within this community. And then, of course, mentors, which there is a plethora of. Logan says, everyone I've met has been super friendly and willing to share what they've learned. It's the kind of community that fosters a sense of wanting to pay it forward for the next wave of people learning it. And I think this describes an openness that many people feel and the sense of continuous learning that we see in gophers. Carlton says it's been gradual. People in the Go community don't try to make themselves superior. Simple is better. It is the beginning of a conversation like mechanical sympathy, the power of an inclusiveness, and the love of a working up to hard things. Go is goodness for the soul. And again, I think that sense of humbleness and inclusivity is rampant in the Go community. And the simplicity is something that the language itself shares with its community. So we've grown exponentially over the last few years, and it's amazing. So another pun, go-tastic. So let's discuss what just this year is going to look like. There will be 14 Go conferences all over the world. Just last month, I added another 2 to this list, and I'm sure we can anticipate more over the next year. I think it's important to note that many of these have just started in the last maybe 2.5 years, so that is pretty exponential growth. Between those conferences, from my super rough numbers, and math is not my strong suit, there will be over about 7,000 gophers in attendance at these conferences. That's not including the content, the videos, the blogs, the social, everything that will be included from these individuals going and attending these conferences. There are over 125 registered meetups as active in the world, and this is a fairly dated number, I think from maybe 18 to 24 months ago. So I am going to be doing kind of another roundup of active meetups, and my guess is we're gonna see it jump probably between 25 and 50. And Go's being used in over 50 countries, which is pretty awesome and mind-blowing at this point. So in addition to conferences and meetups, we have amazing community initiatives. I went on Women Who Go's website this morning because I had a different number on here, and I counted, and I'm glad I counted because someone would have been like on Twitter, you didn't have it right. So there's 27 chapters worldwide in Women Who Go, and in GoPridge, another organization, is supporting workshops for underrepresented groups all over the globe. So, super rad. We're doing really well. We're growing, we're expanding, we're supporting our community. People feel welcome, it feels inclusive. What is the future gonna look like? I don't know. You know, I'm not a fortune teller. It's definitely not my strong suit. But there are a few broad ideas that I believe that we can focus on to ensure that we continue to grow. I know, this is a really good meme, right? It was like a good find. So I think one really big lesson here when we're looking at what people are resonating with in the community and what we can continue to do is just listen. When someone speaks up about a concern, we should listen and evaluate ourselves. Another thing that can be done is support the community organizers. It's a very hard job. Organizing conferences, meetups, workshops, it's not easy. And our leaders need to know that we appreciate them and their efforts. And then if possible, I encourage you all to step up and ask your companies to help our community continue to grow on its path through financial assistance, if that's not clear. This can be, you know, hey, there's an amazing conference I'm going to. I think that we should sponsor it. This can be, I really want to sponsor a workshop. There's never been one in our city. This can be, we have a space and all we need to do is provide the space and the food for an event tonight. These things really impact the capabilities of our ability to grow. And then we'll be Gopher Fabulous. I think that might be the last one, so just take a moment. Take that in. So if we're able to do this on a broad spectrum, and we are all on the same page, how can we get more granular and assess what we can do on the individual level to truly have impact? Let's just start with this quote real quick. The greatness of a community is most accurately measured by the compassionate actions of its members. Coretta Scott King. We've seen this in my story. We've seen this from other Gophers. It's very clear that we have compassion and empathy for each other. But how can we take this to action? I'm going to suggest that we look at 3 categories of participation to maximize impact. Contributing. One of the best ways is just like continue to use Go, right? So we can learn and stay here and be together. But as you use Go, notify the team, use issues, track your issues, make comments. If you're not getting responses, like just say that, put it on there, ping people. There's nothing wrong with saying that you need help. And then experience reports, which were released, I think, about a year ago. They're more intense to write, but they give a really good case study on the issues that you might be facing in your infrastructures and development. You could also choose to become a leader. A great way to become a leader is to start a meetup in your city if there isn't already one. Often people ask how they should go about this. I get this question at least 3 times a month. And my answer has been for years, like, just go do it. Meetup.com has a whole system in place that if you start a meetup, that it will ping people in your community that will automatically go, hey, there's a new meetup you might be interested in. So if you have an existing meetup that's not kind of going, then we can talk about that in more detail. But if you're feeling like I should start a meetup, but maybe then no one will go, and Meetup's got that. Usually you'll end up with 10 to 20 members even within the first month. To support diversity efforts, you could offer to organize a Go Bridge or Women Who Go workshop. And if this is something that you're truly passionate about, you could start a chapter in your community. One other thing that has just been kind of floating around a little bit more, but I don't feel is talked about as often, because we tend to do the more lecture-style formats of meetups, is rather than have that more formal style, to just start a hack night. You could start that either connected to a meetup, you could start it just in a group of friends and like invite people from your companies, or you could start it at your company and invite different teams to come and hack on projects. And then, if it's not clear already, I'm super big on like supporting other people. So my recommendation is just to go answer some questions or seed your own questions. It just takes a few minutes to answer, you could do this, you could do that, and it's very helpful. The other key point of this that I want to make is that it makes people feel validated when their questions are answered and when their questions don't sit unanswered. And it makes them feel included. So if we want to still have that openness and sense of inclusion in our community, then we have to answer questions. If you're feeling a little bit more adventurous, then you could build a video or do a blog for the community on something you learn. And please keep in mind, it doesn't have to be very difficult, it doesn't have to be very complicated, and it doesn't have to be very long. There are always new gophers, like super impressed with the amount of people whose first time it is at GothamGo in this room. There's always new gophers who are looking for answers to their questions. So if you had that question, it's more than likely someone else did as well. And then just kind of reiterating on like the workshop hack night idea, start it at your company. Cloudflare in San Francisco does a really, really good job of this. They have a monthly night where anyone in the entire company, no matter what their department is able to come to, they go downstairs and they learn programming with Go. And then a huge, huge point that I can't express enough is just ask. Asking, how can I help, goes a really long way. It goes a really long way when someone is learning. It goes a really long way when someone is organizing something. And it goes a really long way when like, you're just kind of, how can I help you today? So this says, very great change starts from very small conversations held among people who care. I put this in here because it's not that you have to have huge impact. It's not that you have to be a massive organizer. Keep in mind these things that are not smaller, but maybe less stressful on you, answering a question, asking if you can help. That goes a very long way, and it shows that we as a community care. So I can't have a talk without minions. It's like a thing for me. So just clarifying, we really do need each other. And to close up, I'm just going to give a few minutes of thanks. A few moments, because a few minutes would be like a lot of thank yous. So I'm not winning a Grammy here, so that'd be awkward. So I want to say thank you. Thank you to the pioneers who started conferences and meetups. I see your leadership and appreciate you and your work beyond measure. Thank you to the early contributors who jumped into this project. And more personally, thank you to everyone who ever told me I was good enough back then and today. To those who lifted me up rather than pull me down. To those of you who listened, even when I whine. Who let me be real and supported me through all my imperfections. Thanks to all of those who I consider my friends. My life would be so much less without this community, and you are all an inspiration.